Dhruv, if you
I
want to
mean,
go, you can go. It's okay.
I'm to heading only. I'm out. You guys have fun. Bye. See
bye man.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
दही
Bye. 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 Bye.
दही खा ले.
हाँ ठीक है.
Okay, hello. Welcome back to Queen's Dead. I'm Sanjeet. I have Amartya, Varun, Prithwish, and Ashwani with me. The same gang except Dhruv. Dhruv is watching Rocky or Rani ki Prem Kahani instead of recording with us.
Done, Nolan.
Instead of discussing Oppenheimer with us. So yeah, make of it what you will. So today we discuss two of Nolan's leftover films that are left to be discussed in the last and final episode of Nolan Month, whatever it is. We discussed Dunkirk and then go to Oppenheimer, and so both films are kind of based on real life incidents and include real life people in many ways.
It's basically
And
Nolan in war. Nolan in
Nolan
war.
during war, yeah.
Yeah.
And different perspectives of the same event in many ways,
Yeah.
and different kinds of explorations, and also in many ways different ways of tackling similar subjects that have been brought onto screen before in history, like how he tackled Dunkirk instead of being like a typical war film as more like a survival thriller, and Oppenheimer instead of being a typical hagiographical biopic drama,
Biopic.
more like a non-linear thrilling drama, I would say, more so as a drama than many would have expected, I guess. Initially I had no idea what the thing was going to be about because I went completely zero, so it was good discovery. But we'll start with Dunkirk.
What do you say? Home.
So we'll go with initial thoughts, what we thought, and I don't know if you guys rewatched it. I haven't rewatched it, so my memory will be from whenever I watched it. So Warren, what do you think about Dunkirk?
So this is like what 6 years ago.
2017?
2017.
Yeah.
First day first show. I was in the queue. It was raining. So very very environmentally accurate to how the film is going to play out in that sense.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I was just sort of blown away. Apart from the fact that there was an interval, because that idea, I didn't know what to expect honestly, because I knew he wasn't going to do the whole sort of generals and politicians
Mhm.
in Whitehall kind of nonsense. But
Mhm.
I certainly didn't expect what we got, and it's a very interesting thing how he puts the known faces on the back burner, and you get
Mhm.
these young, largely unknown men. I think Barry Keoghan at that point had done the killing of the sacred deer, or
Wasn't
was
this his
about to do
debut?
that.
No,
I'm
Barry
not
Keoghan's
sure.
okay. Barry Keoghan had already
Yeah,
done Killing of Sacred Deer.
yeah. So, but essentially, British actors aren't really as well known to us in India as American actors would be.
Mhm.
So that was a sort of clincher, really, and it was just a ride. And I felt like it was also the most emotionally invested I had been in a Nolan film,
Mhm.
because of course, it has something to do with my background, but it
Mhm.
also has something to do with the sort of very natural empathy he manages to, bring up for these guys uh,
Mhm.
from within the audience.
Mhm.
And I had not imagined a war film being like this. Like, it's not, which is what a war film tends to be. Like, you've got an arc which is pre-decided in a war movie, but here
Mhm.
it was just, either it was relentless action followed by a bit of calm, little more, little sort of, it was,
Mhm.
you know very messy in that sense. but so sort of incredibly well put together that
Mm-hmm.
you were just sort of dumbstruck by it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Prithvish?
those were my reactions.
Dunkirk, I just watched it today, and before that, it's the same since like six
Mm-hmm.
years ago. I watched it in a big screen, and just to put it out here, Dunkirk is my first Nolan film in theaters. So
Nice.
Dunkirk, Tenet, Oppenheimer, only three films I've watched, and Dark
Mm-hmm.
Knight just got re-released in India. That
Mm-hmm.
I watched in a big screen. So
Mm-hmm.
Dunkirk for me, like I had a lot of anticipation of watching a Nolan film in a big screen, and like apart from hearing all the hype and all the spectacle that Nolan has created throughout these years, it kind of created a certain kind of anticipation for me. So I was like, okay, let's. I had my own set of interpretations, but then the theater where I watched Dunkirk was showing in a very small cubicle. It's like a rectangle inside a rectangle. Screen, yeah. So they didn't
The
really.
letterbox thing. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So basically, they weren't able to fit the aspect ratio, I guess. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the sound designing, the cinematography, everything. I was in awe of it. I was like, is the sound too loud, or is it just the way Nolan intended to? And also
Mm-hmm.
the narrative in during that time, I was smitten by all of this Nolan's gimmicks now. So I was like, I wasn't that much smitten by the narrative gimmick of it because the network narrative just worked out to me as for me a guy who back in 2017 who just watched Interstellar, rewatched Interstellar, loved it. Inception was
Mm-hmm.
completely love of Inception. At that time, Dunkirk was kind of a mid movie for me. I was like, okay, this is a war movie. They are not doing a proper appropriation, like they are not doing a appropriate portrayal of warfare like Saving Private Ryan or Hacksaw Ridge,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but they're showing some fragments of it. They're more showing the internal conflicts of it. So it was like it was a mid movie for me. It was like that I didn't appreciate. And always when we talk about Nolan, we don't really mention this film because of lack of big names. Well, it is essentially it's a British movie. It's not really with
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really involve any kind of American or any of the American essence it holds to other films. So for me, and now when I rewatch and whenever certain reels used to show up on whenever I used to look up on social media, the entire that kind of uh made me feel that like maybe I have misjudged this movie or maybe I was a bit too harsh on that. But then again, I think Nolan didn't really want to focus more on the visual aesthetics of it rather than showing just an
Mm-hmm.
internal fragments of an ensemble, not a character analysis. As I wrote it on my review today as well, it's not like a character analysis like Oppenheimer or a visual spectacle like Interstellar. It was just a retelling of what the soldiers felt just for
Mm-hmm.
those crucial few hours of like survival and death just hanging
Mm-hmm.
between there. I think Nolan just wanted to show that, and now when I understand what Nolan's intentions, I think that came out to be like quite moving for me. Like just to show that how these guys survived, just to show that process as well. I think the entire movie Dunkirk was a procedure of this entire emotions and their the survival instincts. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, when I looked at Dunkirk in that way, when I interpreted Dunkirk in that way, that it moved me a lot. It moved me a lot. Also, that the scene at the end when the old man is saying that you survived, that's all,
You
and it turns
survived,
out
yeah, yeah.
that guy is blind. That actually made me emotional. That scene actually made me emotional when I watched in theater as well. But now when I understand the gravitas of the movie more than like more than the first time, now it just evokes a lot more emotions than in me than the first time. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it for from my side.
Amartya?
So why I called out the letterbox thing is because I had the same experience while watching Dunkirk in the theater. I
Same
don't
thing,
think
yeah.
yeah, I don't think anybody got aspect ratio entirely, right? Nobody saw the movie Nolan intended it to see. So that is sad.
Ah.
But But I think if that is the only fault this movie has, and that is its presentation, I can still accept that, because other than that, this movie is like a war film without following each of the cliches you are supposed to see in a war film.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Exactly, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It's a very,
But
very
like,
uncliched.
I'm going to be such a hole here, but this is not Sandeshe Aate Hain, this is not that. This is not Border. This is not Saving Private Ryan. This is,
Huh.
and I'm not saying at all that those movies are bad, or character exploration of each of these soldiers, what they are thinking, what they are going through is bad. That's a storytelling choice,
Mm-hmm.
and those, when they work very well. Saving Private Ryan, it works. Hacksaw Ridge, through the perspective of Andrew Garfield's character, it works. I think.
Mm-hmm.
but like, I'll just quickly jump in here because this was very interesting to say that in Dunkirk, Nolan is trying to avoid the conventional tropes of war or anti-war drama, which are typically made in Hollywood. But
Hmm.
I mean, this is one thing that he has been doing it for almost all his films.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not just the
Huh.
non-linearity of the edit, but like
yeah,
he
exactly.
picks up a very commercial genre and then he's like, what new can I do in this
He's
particular
trying
Yeah.
to
film?
make it his own, if you
And
see that.
no, but like then again, it's not so much of an experiment because he has to.
Hmm.
So his experiments are limited in the sense that he's using the same conventional tropes, but he's not actually subverting them. What he's in fact doing is that he's tweaking them here and there.
Hmm.
No,
Mm-hmm.
and these are minor tweaks which lead to a lot of big changes. And this, I think, I didn't notice it in Dunkirk first. I noticed this in Tenet first. I had
Hmm.
this discussion with Dhruv also. But in Dunkirk,
Mm-hmm.
it's very much overt before you because it's not like survival war films have never been made. They have been made quite a while. Like you mentioned, Saving Private Ryan and Hacksaw Ridge, both of them are survival war films. Right? They are about survival. They are not so much about war itself.
No, but
And
this is primarily a thriller. This is not
This is
really
prime. Yeah.
technically, yeah. So, I mean, it's functioning in that survival zone primarily as a thriller,
hmm.
right? That's the whole difference that in that way.
Yeah. Saving
Yeah.
Private Ryan has that adventure element because the mission is
Huh,
involved.
because there's mission involved and they're going to a
Yeah, the
certain.
Definitely.
second, yeah, the after the first act, it becomes like an adventure film, right? Because you have
Yeah.
to search for the Private Ryan.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
That's the
I
whole
think,
point. Yeah.
I think what Nolan was trying to do with Dunkirk is he was trying to show, the quote unquote theater of war, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I was comparing it to watching a movie itself, right? Because watching a movie in a theater is a very communal experience. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're
Yeah.
inside a theater, when the lights are off and everything, your individuality is not in question. You're watching a movie, you're experiencing the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your individuality comes after you are out of the theater. That's when
Mm-hmm.
your opinions start forming. Nolan, I think, technically does that to this movie. He creates it as a theater of war. It's not about the individuality, it's about the soldiers as a collective whole.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like what the soldiers itself go through, all the trauma and everything. It doesn't matter. I mean, it does to a certain degree because he tries to sprinkle in character development in couple of sections. But what matters is archetypal characters signifying a specific point or genre of some sort. A
Mm-hmm.
soldier being a rookie, a soldier being a medical officer, a soldier being a cook, or whatever it is, and
Mm-hmm.
then showing what they go through. And because Dunkirk, the real event, was also kind of like a rescue mission for another section, that is the British
Mm-hmm.
population. So he's also showing that perspective. This is a
Yeah.
movie all about perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
It's a movie, a collective perspective as a whole, how society itself, how the British society itself banded through, you know, to
Mm-hmm.
rescue people. It's ultimately a humanist effort in a way, which is ironic considering what the war actually was, what Dunkirk actually was, and how the movie ends also is very, emblematic of that, because the movie ends by showing that the war doesn't end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still smack dab in the middle of it.
It's just the
Mm-hmm.
story of the ensemble. It's just the
Yeah,
story of the infantry.
it's just a
That's all.
story
Yeah.
of an event within a larger theater of war. It's just a story of
It's a
one
small
single event.
fragment.
Yeah.
And the character is who you become. Like that's the audience, right?
Exactly.
You're discovering with the
Exactly.
Just
character.
to just
The
to quote
audience,
Benoit Blanc, it's a donut within a donut.
yes, yes. And it's also, and also what I felt was that because the characters are so undefined in a way,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
the audience surrogate version of it, some people might argue that that's the criticism, that audience surrogate without giving characters any art. I think the audience surrogate works here because you are completely immersed,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's what
Hmm.
and that's what he's showing through his work, Nolan. Because that scene in the beach where the first soldier is lying down as the bombing is occurring each and every single time.
Yeah.
Bomb occurs, one blast, two blasts, the third blast,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
the final blast just happens just inches from him, and then the dirt falls.
Yeah.
Falls on
The
him. Yeah.
camera is unmoving. That is
Mm-hmm.
immersive because the
Mm-hmm.
camera being unmoving is showing you that the soldier is also unmoving. He's like stricken with fear,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what
Mm-hmm.
the audience is also feeling. That's what he's
Also,
trying
I
to.
feel. Also, I feel. No, no.
No, no, it's
Go
okay.
ahead. Okay. No, I just wanted to add one thing. Just when I was rewatching Dunkirk, I was like, all this when I Amartya was saying all these technicalities. I was like, all these things, like All Quiet on the Western Front should have taken notes from Dunkirk, and they could have upgraded. They had a brilliant story. They had a brilliant screenplay, brilliant performances as well. But in technicalities, I don't know. It just fell flat, and
No, in
it
what
should have
sense?
taken notes on Dunkirk in on these all these immersive experiences, man.
Yeah, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Dunkirk is a film made for theaters. All Quiet is a film made for
On
Netflix.
All
Netflix.
Quiet, I think, released on theaters now in the
No, it
It
had
released
that
in
typical
theaters
US.
in.
Netflix
It was in theaters in
token
Europe,
I
release.
think
but
I think also I think also I'm not. I don't dislike All Quiet as much as
I liked
many
it
of the.
quite a bit.
Yeah, I
No,
liked it quite a
I
bit.
don't dislike it. It was like it was
Yeah,
fine. It was fine, just fine.
but that's the point, right? They are different films by different
yeah,
filmmakers.
yeah,
A person who
Also,
has
yeah,
a
yeah.
personality will make something
I
like
think I think the bigger
Dunkirk.
I think one of the much more interesting comparisons would be to compare Dunkirk with 1917 because of
yeah.
how much of
I
these
was
are
going to say
super
Uh,
immersive
1970
yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
experiences.
yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
No, and I mean the thing is that All Quiet on the Western Front is is episodic, whereas
Yes,
Hmm.
Dunkirk is about one
And
singular
1917 is
moment.
more like a thriller.
Both
1917,
1917 and Dunkirk, right?
yeah.
Dunkirk,
yeah.
yeah.
And
I,
the
The
nature of
Dunk.
trench warfare
hmm.
in All Quiet on the Western Front, uh, trench warfare happened in probably advancing a few meters in a day.
Exactly.
It wasn't as dynamic as the battles fought in World War II, where Blitzkrieg, the
Yeah.
tactic followed by the Germans, paved the way for battle to become more mobilized. Because
Mm-hmm.
the Germans took France in what, a week or
A
10
week.
days or something like that.
Mhm.
Insanely quick war, as opposed to sort of the First World War, which was
They were
the French kept
blindsided.
pulling back and
The,
entrenching.
they were blindsided, right? The French
Yeah.
completely blindsided. They did not expect that. Also, I think that if you look at Dunkirk, I think there was a criticism when I had while watching Following that how much of this time playing, or the
Mm-hmm.
non-linearity, how much of it worked in Following. For me, it did not work because it was unnecessary. It was just Nolan trying to put his stamp in a movie which could already be Hitchcocky. He did not
Again,
need that.
first film he wanted to try.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
different.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Huh.
exactly. I understand. Here, though, I think it worked very well for me because I think I recently heard a argument that, not even an argument, it's a statement that a movie's vitality, a movie's volatility exists only within those 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
After that, a film's world is supposed to vanish because that's what
Mm-hmm.
a film has been constructed as. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it is
Right.
supposed to exist within that 2 hours. While that statement is not entirely accurate, one of the things that you can parse from the statement is that time can be manipulated in the story you are trying to tell. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and here,
And especially in the case of other Nolan films, also it happens.
exactly.
I'm very clear. I like the first film that I watched of his was Dark Knight Rises, and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
effect of just watching the whole thing and coming out of cinema was like two different
Yeah.
halves of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
life. And it felt like that. So I guess it's the same thing. But yeah,
yeah,
continue.
yeah. So I can understand why, he's trying to make sure that, the time is compressed for some individuals, time is
Mhm.
expanded for other individuals. For the
Mhm.
people in the boat, the civilians, it's a week, it's a day. For the soldiers, it's a week. And for the pilots, it's an hour.
Pilots.
It's an art.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
an hour. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, they are all going towards the same point. The compression or the digression, all of it occurs in showing how war is trying to evoke tension of both different types. But at the end of the day, it's still tension. You're still going into an
Mhm.
area of high conflict.
Mhm.
You know, for some, that high conflict will keep on repeating itself for over a week. For the soldiers, it's repeating for over a week. It's a week of
Yeah.
waiting for a rescue.
Yeah.
How can I
Mhm.
get out of
Mhm.
here?
Yeah.
How am I
S-
going to get out of here? That's the tension. For the
Survival. Yeah.
pilot, it is like, yeah, for the pilot, it's an hour. They're supposed to reach,
Mhm.
they're supposed to rescue, they're supposed to do their job while ensuring that the other planes do not, blast them off. And for the
Mhm.
civilians, that's an entirely different ballgame.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's compression and digression, and he's trying to do that. He's trying to do that while ensuring that, you know, he can make it as compact as possible. That's why I appreciate this movie much more, because this is his shortest movie. I think second shortest movie. I think
Second
Yeah.
shortest after,
147, I think.
yeah, after
one hundred
following,
and
this is the
one
shortest.
forty seven. Yeah, yeah. And they're
Mhm.
mad. It's mad impressive. No, the amount of storytelling he's doing within 107 minutes. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
impressive as hell. When I
Huh.
rewatched it a week ago, it was just damn. It was. I mean, I just remembered how much I had loved the movie the first time.
Mhm. Mhm.
I
I
Ashwini.
think
I
Dunkirk in 1917 goes like head to head as on the basis of technicalities.
mm,
1917 goes a little bit too far. I think Dunkirk has this the screenplay on the other side as well, but I don't think 1917 screenplay का उसका भी उतना ज्यादा खास
but
कुछ
I
uh,
felt the
honestly,
bigger problem with 1917 was
magnanimity नहीं
to
था.
me it felt like a video game rather than a film.
Yeah, it's what
That was
exactly. It's
a
the
bigger.
magnanimity of 1917 lies in its technicality only.
but
कि
Yeah.
yeah, and
that was done
in
in a one
Dunkirk,
shot. It was done in a one shot. And it's just a story of two soldiers just surviving. It's like a video game,
and
nothing
in
else.
Dunkirk, and the Dunkirk, the thing is, the criticism that this movie has no character, this movie has no quote unquote character development.
Yeah,
Somehow, not
Mhm.
because
having quote unquote
it was
character
never supposed
development
to be. Nah.
made me invested more. You know,
Yeah,
But character, a little bit of exploration happened
And
with
you know
Killian
what?
Murphy's
in
Sorry,
character,
Dogs,
Sanjeet.
right?
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, the only time. Yeah, yeah, no, I got it. But the Killian Murphy character also, right? It's efficient introduction.
Yeah.
Killian
Mm-hmm.
Murphy's character, a PTSD affected soldier.
Yeah.
So whatever he's doing, he's affected by trauma.
Yeah.
That's
Mm-hmm.
it. That's
Mm-hmm.
all I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Ashwini?
you know what?
Sorry, continue.
The thing is that you do have a lot of character. Even if, take that part where they're all taking shelter inside one of those
boats.
boats, one of the
Yes.
beached vessels,
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and you see the entire sort of argument going on about whether or not Anoirin Barnard's character should step out of the boat and
Hmm.
hand himself over to the Germans, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
is character. That is informing you. What is character supposed to do? It's supposed to inform you of the
It's
circumstance of
supposed to inform you the circumstance and how the story will move.
what.
Ideally, that's how characters work.
Yeah, I mean the
Mm-hmm.
whole,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the character debate then became an extended one of, oh, there are no Indians, there are no Belgians, there are no women in the film.
There were
Show
no
me.
Indians, man.
No, there was a company of Indians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indian animal transport company was there at Dunkirk.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm.
thing is, they weren't evacuated. The
Oh
ones who
yeah.
got evacuated were the British.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Nolan doesn't really owe it to us. Perhaps
Mm.
an Indian filmmaker owes it to us to go and tell that story,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
to tell the story of the Indians who fought in the two
Mm.
world wars. But
Ashwini,
the
please
whole
chime
thing
in
is
whenever you want.
that the
Varun, you
film
continue.
sort of breaks down these barriers of, uh, nationality in that sense. It
Mm-hmm.
could just as easily be the story of, to me, for instance, like, because my grandfather was in the Air Force, I was
Hmm.
reminded of what he used to tell me about our defeat in the war
Hmm.
with China. And of course, the Air Force did not fly in active operations. My grandfather was a transport pilot, so he had flown ops then. And I was reminded of those stories because that was a defeat for us.
Hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
this Dunkirk was a defeat for the British and
Yeah.
for the Allies in a larger sense. I could correlate events that are, set apart by about 22 years.
Hmm.
The idea that there needs to be, a name, a background, a sweetheart waiting at home in the form
Exactly.
of like uh, Pooja Bhatt from Border is a matter of
Mm-hmm.
personal preference.
That came out of
Mm-hmm.
nowhere.
I only said it because you
I
said
liked
Pehle
it.
Se Aate Hain.
I
I know.
like
I
it.
know. I know.
Full approval.
And I didn't have it in me to name the entire cast of NOC.
Please don't.
So I feel like also in that moment, what Dunkirk does is it gives you a glimpse of the immediacy of survival,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
That requirement, and the film does that well enough. It doesn't need to do.
Uh-huh. Ashwini,
I mean, I'm
easy.
thinking what Dunkirk doesn't give us is like "Kadmon se milte hai kadam" wala Gana. Everybody breaking into
I was
everybody
going to say,
breaking
at least
into a
Dunkirk.
perfectly choreographed set piece on the island and on the boats. And Tom Holland
Mm.
behind the mark says a 40 leader ki jagah. He's like singing something. I
Hardy,
don't
sir,
know.
not
I
Holland.
I just
Oh,
I just
Oh
want to
yeah,
know
Tom
one thing
Hardy,
from
Tom
you. I
Hardy.
just want to ask one question to you guys. How
yes.
how how would you feel that the movie would have been good, like better offer was if JP Datta would have directed Dunkirk?
JP Datta shouldn't direct at all anymore. Yeah, he made a
Now,
film
but
1 year
if it
after
was in the
Dunkirk.
90s, then you're sure.
Yeah,
Ah, he made that. What is that movie?
Paltan.
Didn't
With
he
Oh my
Sonu
recently
Sood,
God,
make a
man.
film?
Paltan.
Yeah,
Paltan.
Paltan. Yeah,
Paltan. Yeah, I remember it. Watch it
Amartya and
out.
I have had discussions about the geography of that film.
I mean, if everything goes well, someday there will be a film about the Indian contribution to the World War II. That
exactly.
will have a big
हाँ लेकिन
chapter
बनाएगा
on
कौन वो डिपेंड
Dunkirk.
करता है ना.
हाँ.
बनाएगा तो कोई बना भी लेगा लेकिन फाइनेंस कौन करेगा इंडियंस आर
बवाल हो
इंटरेस्टेड
जाएगा. There is bawal. There is there is a
बवाल इज
film that recently
बवाल इज
that
टॉकिंग
released.
अबाउट
Indians
नॉर्मल थिंग
contributed. Dude, what are you talking about?
Hmm.
Indians contributed. The Janvi Kapoor had epilepsy in the shower camera. What is like gas chamber?
कैश
Yeah,
Shower.
she
Shower?
contributed. Yeah,
संजीत lives
I'm
in
saying
Germany
gas
he is going to
shower.
jail
Yeah, the fact that Sanjeet is in that country is the hilarious bit
Now with
here.
now with that casual mention, ये पूरा section cut होगा from the podcast.
हमें इजरायली मिलने आने वाले हैं
But
Ashwini,
talking,
continue.
yeah, I mean, मैं क्या ही बोलूं about the experience of the film because I watched it like 3 times and अभी
Mm-hmm.
they had a rerun, so I caught it in the theater. Uh,
Nice.
there are 2 points like I am using the podcast to sort of a vessel to counter the popular criticism against any kind of and two of the two of the very popular criticism against this film Dunkirk is like one is that it's politically very indifferent or ignorant, whatever you want to
Hmm.
use, and the second is like what Amartya was also mentioning that this time manipulation is not at all required. It's just
Hmm.
something that Nolan is doing just to show that he can do it, and
But that's not a
which is,
criticism, no?
I mean, you okay? I mean, you can call it a trolling or whatever, but like it's a very recurring theme
But
in the
see, if you're a
discourse. Like,
filmmaker, if you're trying to make something, you got to make it something different than what
And
others
it's
are doing, right?
yeah,
So
and it's
you
not as
you
if that
need to
he's not
think.
successful in it.
the
हाँ
point ये
बिल्कुल.
होता है the meat of the criticism lies in the idea that if you remove that particular uh, gimmick from the screenplay,
Hmm.
That's
does it
not a
affect the
gimmick, यार.
screenplay?
That's
it's
not a
not a
gimmick,
No,
यार.
gimmick
so no, but I'm
गिमिक
just saying
गिमिक
कि
होते हैं
this
No,
is
no.
the
I
meat
think
1970
of
में
the
Ashwani.
idea.
सिंगल शॉट में
I think
करना वो
Ashwani
गिमिक
is
होता है.
pointing. I think Ashwani is pointing out the criticism which has been given to the film. I don't think
So
it's
huh.
it's
No,
the
no,
same.
that's correct.
if you remove that gimmick from the screenplay, then
Hmm.
does the screenplay change? Is it harmed or
Okay,
something like that?
you know,
Point. Yeah, Varun, go on.
for the people who have that criticism, the film that swept the writing awards that year was Shape of Water. If
Yeah.
you turn that aquatic creature into a man, does the film change? I mean, it's, people will find anything to pick apart about a film if they
Oh,
don't
of
like.
course. No,
No,
So
but
I mean, I'm
if
not saying
you
what
also
is.
take into account if someone is sitting down to write something, what so
Exactly.
let's think about it in that sense. Like what was Nolan's top objective? So biggest objective was he wants to make a film on this subject, which is Dunkirk, especially about the soldiers. Second thing was about to make a survival thriller. I think that is
Hmm.
what appealed to him. Now, in that, how does he infuse his persona,
Mm.
his personality? How does he become the auteur that he's supposed to be, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
So I guess all those things are like check boxes, and then he's doing how he wants to tell the story. It all depends on what the story is and how the story is being told, right? At the end of the day.
Mm.
So it's
The
like you
idea is, yeah, it's
go
like,
ahead. Go ahead. नहीं नहीं
no,
बोलो बोलो it's okay.
I mean, यही बोल रहा था कि when we are talking about, I'm not meriting this particular criticism with any substance
Mm.
more than it deserves to be,
Mm.
but
Mm-hmm.
my idea is that, sorry, my counter to that has always been the fact that it's a very important element in Dunker's screenplay because the urgency across the three different,
Mm.
time horizons or durations. I mean, I think duration is a better word to pick here.
Mm-hmm.
Is the same. Like urgency is not
Exactly.
changing, and it is not just for the audience, but it's for like it's not to make us feel something. It's not that convoluted. It's more about the idea that if you are put in this kind of situation, the theater of war, like Amartya was mentioning, then the urgency will remain the same, whether or not.
Exactly.
So if hypothetically, if you are in at war and you know that tomorrow the war will end, I mean, you obviously don't
Mm.
know it, but if tomorrow war was to end, then that
Mm.
one day will have the same urgency than the 1 month will have if the war had to end 1 month later. So
Mm.
that is one thing. Second thing, time is a very important factor. Uh, Given this particular episode in World War II also, because
Yeah.
we all know that German troops were arriving, right?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, I am not very good with the facts here, but as far as I remember, French were holding them off at some front line. So
at Dunkirk town.
Acha, okay,
Mm.
so that is one. And then, so this is again one important thing. Second is that another troop that was arriving, I think Hitler ordered them to wait for the, supplies to catch
Mm.
up. And while they waited, they were caught up in a storm. So, and that costed them 2 days. And in that 2 days, the rescue happened. So it was all a matter of
It's a
Hitler's
race
stupidity,
against time.
Hitler's military stupidity, and a miracle, of course. And yeah, race against time. So I mean that is very central to the idea. And when you
Exactly.
are talking something about that in a war film, then I think this does not stand as a gimmick. So I mean, I agree with you, Sanjeet. It's not a gimmick to me also. I'm just saying
Mm-hmm.
if it is a called a gimmick, then this would be my counter. And the second thing is that political indifference. So this is something I think I registered only on my third watch. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's Nolan is not very vocal and very on the face with his politics, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not also the most radical politics that you find in cinema. It's not definitely Stanley Kubrick, right? But
Mm-hmm.
point is key in whispers in very muted ways. There are enough political undertones, and there are also opinions that are very much laid out. But you have to pay attention again, and maybe you will miss it in the first watch, but you will definitely get it in the second watch. And this time,
Mm-hmm.
there was certain undertones which were indicating the British apathy to the French. I'm not talking
Yeah. Yeah.
about whatever happens in that boat. I'm not just
Boat,
talking
yeah.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
That was still perfectly rational because they were trying to survive. They were
Mm-hmm.
panicking. They were acting on city. But I am thinking of these, planning and talking and discussion between the officers and
Yeah.
what Churchill had ordered and what does it actually mean in a practical sense.
Even in the
All
mole,
those
even
things.
in the mole, right? That's what the
Yeah.
bridge was called, right? The mole.
The
E-
mole.
Mm.
yeah, even in
It
the
was
Yeah,
mole.
Pier actually.
Yeah. Even in the pier, right? When they were approaching with the stretcher and everything, the people were, or the soldiers were like only the
No
British,
French. No
no
French.
French,
Only
only
British.
the
No
British,
yeah,
French
no
soldiers,
French.
yes.
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, exactly. So this facade of allies again. I
yeah,
mean, I'm calling it definitely jump into this when we discuss Oppenheimer. Typically, Russians were an ally, but there was no condor, there was no information exchange, nothing was there.
Yeah.
And when when bombs were dropped on the Japanese towns, it was only British and America who
yeah,
knew, right?
Mm.
Uh, this thing was very this thing caught my interest because how else do you criticize your own policy
hmm,
without being
Overt
on the
about it.
nose about it,
Mm.
without being overt about it. Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
I mean, I'm not saying that there is no scope to be overt. Very better,
but
right?
that's also a filmmaker's choice, right? If you
Yeah.
Yeah,
want.
that is a filmmaker's choice. I mean,
No,
that is
like
also dependent on the style. What are the priorities? Here,
Exactly.
his
Mm-hmm.
priorities are very clear. Like he's not even
Yeah.
naming the enemy, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. Very
because
specific.
he is very rigid with the idea that war is the enemy.
Mm.
No,
Exactly.
this idea, war is the enemy, does not matter who the party is,
Yes.
right?
I
We
don't know
all know
whether I
it's not.
agree with that, but I get what you're saying because they do mention the Germans overtly. You do see the cross on the Messerschmitt planes
I mean, yeah, visually
a
you
little bit.
do, but I
Yeah.
don't
So
remember the any kind of verbal cue, like somebody saying
I
Germans or
think Brian Darcy James is the actor who plays the British
Yeah,
colonel.
James Darcy. Yeah, James
Yeah.
Darcy.
Uh, so he mentions it that the German tanks have stopped. So
Hmm.
that's
Okay.
your first sort of, and of course the leaflet that Finn Whitehead's character Tommy
yeah. I
picks
mean,
up.
we
It
all
says
know it's
Achtung. No, it says
we all
Achtung.
we all know it's Germans, but also leaflets again in the aerial fight the fighter planes. So it's not like it's not a conscious effort to hide that fact. I'm just saying
Right.
the reiteration is not done. In typical war film, there is a
Yeah.
reiteration,
Probably not.
right?
Hmm.
So because you have to establish the clear sides, like there is
Yeah.
this protagonist and there is this antagonist side,
Yeah,
but
because here it's not about conflict, like you said,
ah,
right? It's
yeah,
about
it's
It's about
surviving.
survival. Yeah.
about
But I think
survival.
Mm-hmm.
also, on the flip side, while Nolan does make it clear that there was a distinction happening between the British and the others, I think there's also an argument to be made, and I don't know whether he's trying to get at that in the film. There's an
Mm-hmm.
argument to be made that a country's government is only really responsible for its own people. Whatever, in because in war, essentially, even in allies, you're essentially looking out for your own interests. Your allies, by
Of course, yeah.
definition, of self-interest.
I
Otherwise, the
mean,
Mm-hmm.
US and the
I mean,
USSR
isn't
would never be allies.
yeah? I mean, isn't that kind of falls into the obvious inevitability also in a way
Yeah,
because I mean, ship quote unquote that was tenuous at best. It's like
at any
en-
point of time.
yeah, enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's literally it.
Right.
Italy and Germany were the two biggest, the boxers in the town. So we have to band together because otherwise we will be destroyed. That's
Correct.
the
Mm-hmm.
only tenuous allyship. It did not mean that they are going to, share secrets about the weaponry or warfare or, they will inculcate trade once the war is over. I don't think that was ever the intention.
The intention, even
Yeah.
if
Mm-hmm.
that may have been the way they had hoped,
Yeah.
sort of when the first war
Even if they
ended.
had thought about starting it through, initially maybe that was the, process that had been laid out that once the war is over we will start allies, but that's what you do, right? It's
Yeah,
like you're opening up a talk, just to ensure that
you're
allyship
opening up a yeah,
yeah,
essentially.
yeah, but
But to
that's
Mm-hmm.
it.
me, like, I think here, uh, Dunkirk is one of the largest military evacuations that's ever
Exactly.
taken place in history, right?
Mm,
Similar to that, I think the politics of nationality,
mm,
for instance, finds its way into any situation like this where survival is important. For instance, when we were evacuating our citizens from Kuwait back in the early 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and Air India and the Indian Air Force flew some 1 lakh Indians back
mm, mm, mm.
like
You mean
memorable in
Airlift?
Airlift. Yeah, Akshay Kumar's only good performance in maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
The that
Baby.
film does, no, probably Baby, but Baby is not really a performance. That mustache is also fake. So
Can we
I think
continue, please?
in that film, Raja Menon never mentions that the Indian government also evacuated other South Asian citizens. So
Yeah.
people from Pakistan and Bangladesh were also flown back along with
Mhm,
Indians because their
mhm.
countries could not. So it's also about what lens you're
The filmmaker is
looking
choosing
at
to.
it from.
Hmm.
And in Nolan's case, he's probably, I think, he's trying to look at it from the most practical, because 70 years on, you can afford to be practical,
Of course,
right?
yeah.
You can look at it with without the rose tinted glasses, as it were.
Mhm.
And it was what it was. We can argue about it till kingdom come about whether it was right or wrong to
It was
leave
never
the.
the they were never the golden generation, right? They were never
No,
the
they weren't.
golden. Yeah, they never were the
Mhm.
golden generation. Even if they
But
wanted it to look like
I wanted to ask one thing, which because through which we'll also transition to Oppenheimer, because I have a lot of questions. What do you guys think about the editing of Dunkirk specifically?
that. Whenever you talk about editing in a Christopher Nolan film, what always comes to mind is the score for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
score
because
always goes along with the
score always
editing.
goes like hand in hand, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I
I think
think both these films are underscored throughout, right?
yeah.
Dunkirk,
His
everything
dependency
underscored, right?
yeah, his dependency on the score is very evident. Even now, I think
Mm.
more so here, more so in Dunkirk as well as Oppenheimer. The
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
scores are elevating the emotions even more. It doesn't matter whether the dialogues are incendiary enough or not. It doesn't matter. The score is doing quite a lot of legwork.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm. My
in case
my
of
thing was my bigger question
yeah.
was like if you see like scenes in Dunkirk, like how they go from how you follow the characters and different
Mm-hmm.
timelines and everything. I'm talking beyond that, even if you look from shot to shot or scene to scene, I feel the cutting is much more stable, feels stable to me.
It's
And
not
it's not a
chaotic, right?
criticism.
It's
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 not
not,
not.
chaotic. It's
the
yeah.
situation itself is chaotic, right? That's a different
Yeah.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
My question comes from because I watched Oppenheimer yesterday, and
Mm-hmm.
to me it felt like the editing at times when it went from shot to shot, and like even when there was like short reverse shot also, it felt a bit jarring to me. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
you guys felt about it. So that was what my question was, because I think he changed the editors. Earlier
I
it was Lee
yeah.
Smith. This
Counter
is
question.
Jennifer Lame.
Counter.
So yeah.
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 Counter question. Counter question to you. Did the jarring thing felt for you throughout Oppenheimer, or did it feel for
No,
you
no, not
later on?
throughout. Not throughout. It just felt in bits and pieces where I was like, oh, why are they? Why? At
Okay.
some point, there was this one conversation. Of course, I don't remember it that well now,
Mm-hmm.
but there was this one conversation which was happening, and then they suddenly jump axis and go to another side, which to me felt like very off, because Nolan is making a film. To him, filmmaking is science. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's doing everything according to how it needs to be done. Like it should feel when you're watching as a viewer, the viewing experience and the oral experience are number one priorities in the whole
Mm-hmm.
experience. So when you watch something like Dark Knight, when he breaks 180-degree axis, it is for a reason,
Yeah.
something like that. To me, when I watched Oppenheimer, to me it felt jarring rather than for a reason. That's what I'm saying. So I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
compare the editing when goes from something like Dunkirk and Oppenheimer, which I feel are very similar in many cases, not just historical events, but
Mm-hmm.
also how basically I mean, I felt Oppenheimer was also was about a lot of chaos that was happening about building the bomb and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
he makes it much more thrilling with the editing of cutting into like
Yeah. Yeah.
not just two timelines, but also three timelines and everything else back and forth. So
Yeah.
that's what my question was. I don't know if what do you guys think about it. That was basically my point.
Honestly, if I have to be honestly, if I have to think about it, I think I don't know whether I felt it was jarring. I felt the
Mm-hmm.
chaos of it. I felt the chaos of it more towards the end. When conversations are happening in the second timeline is being recontextualized in the third timeline, and each and every time the conversation and their answers were being given presented in the same way, but with different context added upon it. So like the
Okay.
cutting was chaotic. Cutting was chaotic then because
Yes.
the conversation and the aftermath was happening harder now, because you are finally understanding what the conversation actually meant then,
And
what the conversation is meaning now.
Means no.
You
Okay.
know,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so that's why the chaos. That's why the chaos then. I felt the chaos, but I think the chaos was more because there is also a general point of anxiety. in the entire
Of
movie, but
course.
tone of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so that's why I was asking whether you felt that jarring throughout the movie or in bits and pieces, because
No,
then
it
I
felt
can
in bits and
identify.
pieces, not throughout the film,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
if it was throughout the film, I think it must have been
yeah,
some thought
exactly,
behind it. But bits
exactly,
and
yeah.
pieces to me felt like a bit jarring when I was
Hmm.
like, oh, why would he take a decision, something like this?
I think I
But I
would need.
guess
I
it's
think I
also
would
my
need
I
a
first
think,
viewing,
few.
and I
I
was
think,
discovering the film much more, and now I will
Exactly.
yeah.
rewatch and yeah.
I,
But yeah,
I
we can.
think I would
I
need to
think we can
rewatch
transition
too.
to Oppenheimer.
We imagine a future, and our imaginings horrify us. They won't fear it until they understand it. And they won't understand it until they've used it. Theory will take you only so far. I don't know if we can be trusted with such a weapon. But we have no choice.
Everybody was talking about that Nolan made his own version of Social Network. So when I rewatched Social Network after watching Oppenheimer, I noticed this jarring thing in Social Network as well. So there
Okay.
was this interrogation happening, and there is the scenes happening in between as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there is
Hmm.
one part of conversation that is happening, and then it goes to flashback that incident is happening, and then it's being uh, conversed, and then it's being talked about in the interrogation room. So I think Nolan
Hmm.
took that kind of I think so he took some kind of influence from Social Network as well, or I think this is
Possibly.
some kind of a narrative structure where
It's a
you follow.
narrative structure
It's a
anyway, right?
narrative
Structure
structure.
anyway.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
non-linear. It's
yeah.
a
It's
non-linear
not just in
screenplay.
a interrogation room and incident only in question. It's been noticed in a lot of films where you just where just mentioning or giving descriptions about some certain incident, and this that very incident happens side by side as well.
Which
And
is why
I guess
which is why I also say that the music is very important
yeah,
Hmm.
in
yeah.
the
The
That's the
music
social
plays a
binding
very
force,
important,
right?
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
binding
a
yeah,
key
force.
role. No?
in the
It
social network.
establishes the mood of it. Yeah,
Yeah, in the social network. Social network is a perfect movie for me. I think it
it is. It
Hmm.
is.
it's a perfect movie for me. I can't honestly find any flaw in that movie. And
Hmm.
one of the key things why that movie holds so well together is the Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score.
Atticus Ross music. Yeah, yeah.
That score is jaw-droppingly good. It is so good, that score. And especially in the courtroom scenes when the cross-cutting and intercutting is occurring, take note of the score, how the score is actually balancing those out. You can
Okay.
understand the tones immediately as the timeline
Hmm.
shifts. And
Hmm.
I think one of the differences between Social Network and Oppenheimer is Goran is trying to be operatic
He's
anxiety
just basically
driven.
trying to be Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer on steroids. He's basically
Well,
yeah, Ludwig Göransson. The way that guy gave me panic attack in Can You Hear the
yeah.
Music for the first time when I heard it
Hmm.
in
Oh yeah.
IMAX and watched it in IMAX.
Yeah.
That it was like he's trying to be Hans Zimmer, full on Hans Zimmer in Dune, but
I
make it
think
more
he's not
operatic and on
trying to be Hans
steroids.
Zimmer. He's trying to be himself. I guess
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
serving one
But
of the stories.
Mm,
To me, it felt like the Can You Hear the Music bit. To me, it felt
yeah,
like
yeah,
two different emotions, and it
yeah,
was
yeah,
the whole music operated in that aspect. Like it went from wonder to horror
yeah.
to
Look at
back to
Ludwig
wonder again.
Göransson's.
And it
Yeah,
yeah,
I
and it
mean,
is always about that expand. So you always see like aerial shots of the places, and then
yeah.
micro molecules and like the electron
Yeah.
it's
flow.
Mhm.
All that.
No,
again
if
it's
you
that's what
notice
I'm talking.
Ludwig Göransson's work
Hmm.
that he has done, like if you exclude Tenet and Oppenheimer, Ludwig Göransson gives it more on the synth wave
Hmm.
side. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you notice
Mm-hmm.
Mandalorian, if you notice Black
Mm-hmm.
Panther, if you notice
Mm-hmm.
Creed, he gives always his compositions are always around the synthwave
It's
genre.
percussion. It's percussion. Always.
Percussion, yeah,
It's always
it's
percussion. Yeah.
percussionist. But here in Tenet and Oppenheimer, he goes full on like with all the loud bangs and everything, which is
No,
not
but here
really.
this was
It doesn't fit.
a lot more strings. which I haven't heard
Yeah,
in any
strings and
Nolan film in a while.
violence.
A
But
lot of violence.
Violence, a lot of violence, lot of
but in
violence.
Yeah,
Oppenheimer, I think that makes sense because that's what I was talking about. Oppenheimer
Mm.
is
very
in
classical in
Oppenheimer,
that sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oppenheimer.
Mm.
Goranson is trying to be full blown, orchestra operatic.
No, and it also
Okay,
sort of mirroring Oppenheimer's own artistic
exactly.
interests.
That's what I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's orchestral
yeah,
operatic because of the theater which Oppenheimer finds himself in.
not just
For
that,
two.
his
Yeah,
own interests in life were like
his
that.
own interest in life
Mm-hmm.
was like that. Exactly. But
Something
it's
very
also
similar was
very
also there in
internal,
First
and that
Man,
is
by the way.
anxiety.
But yeah, continue.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you
In
for saying that.
First Man,
I thought I was the only
Justin
one who thought
Hurwitz did the
Justin
Justin
same
Hurwitz's
thing
Hurwitz's
with
score is
score, yeah,
similar
yeah,
to
yeah.
this. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That moon
Especially,
landing,
can you hear
Which
the
film? Which
music?
film?
The
Sorry.
moon landing
first
sequence. Yeah, yeah,
moon
yeah.
landing
First
Yeah,
sequence.
Man.
yeah,
First
yeah.
man. First man.
Similar,
Theremin, he
very,
First
uses
very
Man. Yeah,
similar.
yeah.
theremin, which was
Theremin.
Armstrong's
Mm-hmm.
personal favorite
Yeah.
musical instrument. But yeah,
Mm.
continue. Amartya, sorry.
No, no, but that's all I was stating. That the dichotomy of the operatic score as well as the internal anxiety-driven score, which is so much percussion.
Mm-hmm.
That is when Goranson is going back to his percussion roots, right? The continuous, continuous, feet thumping,
Yeah,
increasing the tone and everything.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's also very Zimmer, and that's also very Dunkirk. The
Mm-hmm.
Supermarine soundtrack in the Dunkirk.
Submarine is
In,
great, but I feel that there is some Nolan influence because I saw making of it today morning, and Nolan was there in all the
yeah, yeah,
sittings
Yeah,
when
in
they were
all the
recording
settings.
some.
of course.
So
But
there must be something
Must
yeah,
that he must have told. Yeah.
be,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
thought of it was like completely sort of separate from Amartya and Prithwish, which is I see the editing and the score as being separate elements in terms of one will sort of support the other, and
Hmm.
they're uh, sort of partners in that sense,
Hmm.
Sachin and
Mm-hmm.
Saurav, if you want. But I thought
कहाँ
that
से
the
आते हैं ये सब?
sir Sachin and Saurav is a good partnership. What are you saying?
No, no, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that. I'm just saying the
But
analogies. कहाँ से आते हैं ये सब?
but I thought the chaos of Oppenheimer's, like some of it is edited like it's to me it was similar in its editing in that sense to a bit like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is also a bit of a sprawl of a film. It's
Bit?
taking it, yeah, yeah, but it's shorter than Oppenheimer by a solid 20 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
It
and
feels longer.
it feels longer, definitely.
Yeah.
But in that sense, Oppenheimer is messy, but in a good way. And the editing sort of backs that up because the chaos of the editing in certain places is reflecting the chaos of the character in a very
Mm-hmm.
basic way, but it's also reflecting the chaos of the greater situation. Whether you look at it as being the Red Scare or, nuclear armament immediately after the war, because I think America was the first country to get an atom bomb, Russia the
Hmm.
second,
Hmm.
England, I think England, France, China, and then us. That
Mm-hmm.
that must have been the order. That I'm not sure whether it's accurate, but the fact that you're essentially building up to today, we live in a world where sort of we're talking about nuclear war very casually, or
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the invasion of Ukraine last year,
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
the very simple reality of nuclear war, as it were. But at that time, because it was so new, I think what the editing also does is show you that the world in itself, even after the war appears to be over, is still a mess.
Yeah.
And you're still trying to sort your way out of.
Mm-hmm.
And look at how Oppenheimer keeps walking into trouble. Like, he
Colin, yeah,
walks, he bumps into Colonel Pash, arguably the worst performance in the film, I would say. But
Arey,
You
why?
sure it's not your KCF?
I'm quite sure. I don't think he's got the, like, if you read the book, Pash is described as a properly menacing man. Casey Affleck is so dead-eyed and so expressionless in really everything. And while in
I
another
disagree
actor's
to that
hand,
opinion.
it would have been a great
On
role.
on the other spectrum altogether, because I
Casey
think
Affleck can't act.
that is a
Arey.
different thing. I'm not arguing on that, but
I
I think
I
in
I
that
think
brief moment he was extremely anxiety inducing.
I
Uh,
think Benny Safdie as Teller was also
It was
kind of
very, I enjoyed him.
I I thought he was
He
I
was
great.
liked
very
him quite a bit.
theatrical, But
Yeah,
Taylor
yeah,
is
in
very
theater.
Yeah.
theatrical. Taylor is
But
very theatrical. You'll
if
watch
you've
any Taylor
seen
interview, he's nuts.
okay, no, but if you've seen other Benny Safdie performances, I think this is like the difference is like massive.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't
I
like
saw
him in
that
Good Time much.
yeah, like I
People
because
love
feel
him in
yeah,
Good Time. I
he's a
didn't.
little awkward. He's a little awkward with his like if you see his eyes and everything, he's not
Yeah.
that expressive. But here I thought he was at least doing something physically or something with
Yeah.
like voice modulation or something. So I thought it was interesting.
After
Then
after Good Time, he started to play all the good guys. He was in like this
Licorice
last
Pizza.
film
Licorice
came out na.
Pizza.
Licorice
What is
Pizza,
it?
Are You There, God? It's Me,
It's
Margaret.
me, Margaret. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Played
mean,
all
He's
the good guys.
also he's
discussing
acting
the
in very film, right?
acting showcase in Oppenheimer, think about it because I feel like, I mean, everybody can have different opinions, but I feel the entire cast acted perfectly. They
yeah,
have brought more to the table than what the book would have provided them, because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, the book is non-fictional that way. So uh, I mean, it is definitely a biography, but it's also a whole lot of facts. So it's not in the book. You don't develop character beyond the facts, but the
Yeah.
actors here have brought so much to the table, and I mean, uh, I think the best performance that I feel from the film is Robert Downey Jr. as Louis Strauss, and
oh yeah,
Hmm.
Hands
it's
down.
Extremely
No
fantastic. Yeah,
arguments,
yeah,
no
yeah.
caps,
it's
no caps.
because I remember like everything. I view Oppenheimer from the lens of the book. I cannot remove that bias because I have read it now. I cannot
Yeah.
unread. But
Uh-huh.
Also, I do
I
believe
was
that. Yeah, go ahead, go ahead. I'll tell you after.
I'll just complete this. In the book, Louis Strauss does not give you any room to be sympathetic to him. Like there is not even an iota of understanding or sympathy. It's just pure hatred because it's a bunch of facts of what he did as a
Yeah.
conservative in the U.S. government during McCarthy era. That is it.
but
But
Ashwani, won't you credit that to Nolan's adaptation to a screenplay, or is that also
no,
rudimentary?
it's Robert Downey Jr.'s. I mean, of course, it's a collective effort at the end of the day. The material
Mm-hmm.
is given and the
Hmm.
dialogues that have been written for him, but
Mm-hmm.
the performance itself, there are many moments in which you are not speaking, and
Yeah,
that cannot be captured in book, right? Because
Yeah.
there is no so if there is an image of Robert Downey Jr. when there are things happening to him or before him when he's not speaking,
Hmm.
but he has acted so in a such a nuanced way that you kind of understand his station in that particular situation or circumstance.
mm.
Also, please
And
somebody tell Matt Damon to retire. He
No
was going
man,
to
come
take.
on. I
I
really
mean,
Really?
enjoyed him. I
he's playing the same American
no,
guy
but you know
but
what?
every
someone
because
movie.
But
Leslie
he's
Groves are the
he's
same
supposed to be.
No,
American. Yeah,
I'm not
Yeah,
talking about Leslie Gross. I'm just talking about Matt Damon being Matt Damon in
but
every movie.
but I
Air,
think I have to.
I love
Oppenheimer.
Matt
I'm going
Damon.
to I'm going to
I am
defend
a
Damon
diehard Matt Damon fan.
truly.
No,
And
I
you know
mean,
what? The thing, the
no,
great
no,
thing.
but
see,
I also think Damon is supposed to be playing a completely different character from the movie he's supposed to be in. I think that was a intentional choice,
it,
apparently.
it's not about Leslie Gross. It's just about too much of Matt Damon content dump
Maybe
being
you
Matt.
shouldn't have seen Air before Oppenheimer.
He was great in
I
that.
was
No,
there
like
after Oppenheimer, so
no,
it was better.
He was good.
He was very
See,
good.
he's replaced.
he's good, but it's just being Matt Damon. Also in that movie Ford versus
But that's
Ferrari.
not a criticism, bro.
That's not a
Technically
criticism.
Yeah,
speaking, if a
exactly.
character is
Because
if an actor is being
exactly
I'm
someone who
I'm
in
not even saying
Dunkirk,
it's a
Nolan is being
criticism.
Dunkirk.
I'm not even saying it's a criticism. I'm just saying a remark. And like यार
नहीं,
थोड़ा
I'll
थोड़ा
I'll
आराम
I'll
करिए.
accept
अरे बट वो तेरे लिए
I
अपनी
accept
दुकान
what
थोड़ी
you're
ना
saying.
बंद करेगा यार एक्टिंग की
Exactly. उसके
Exactly,
उसके
right.
पास
No,
चार
in an
बच्चे हैं.
interview in an interview I was reading through some IGN article that Matt Damon actually wanted to retire until
Not retire. Take
Christopher
a
Nolan
break.
take
Take
a
a
break
break.
take a break
Sabbatical.
until Christopher Nolan calls him back.
So here's the thing, right? Partially with what Ashwani says about Downey is because uh, the thing that I gauged about Downey's impression of Strauss
Hmm.
from the pre-release interviews was Downey may disagree with him
Yeah.
politically,
Hmm.
but Downey is clearly in admiration of him as a man to America's corporate efforts at a certain point in time. And
Mhm.
Lewis Strauss is accomplished man. He's served on like Herbert Hoover's stuff during the League of Nations days. So he's had that impressive, humongous sort of uh, government aspiration, which was supposed to culminate in like his appointment as the Secretary of Commerce, which, as we know, doesn't happen. But
Mhm.
I think when we come to the performances in that track, while I think Downey is fantastic, I do have a problem with Ehrenreich, because him and Scott Grimes are the two fictionalized or composite characters in the film.
They were more like moral compasses, technically, I felt.
Yeah, and
The good
you know
angel
the
and the bad angel on that one.
yeah
Yeah, yeah.
the way Ehrenreich sort of eggs him on. It just, I mean, at some point, Strauss would have been like, you bastard, you're taking the Mickey out of me, aren't you? I'll beat you to pulp right here. Because you can tell he's making, and that is a flaw in Ehrenreich's performance, and also to an extent in Nolan's direction of it. That, tone down the cheekiness of it, tone down the obviousness of it a
This I
little.
agree with. I mean, there was little moment of cheekiness, like Colonel Nichols at one point says "ouch" when Roger Robb's name is mentioned, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
"This is cringe."
Yeah,
Like this moment is very cringe. It should
yeah.
not have been here. It's
It
like
should not.
kids planning a very terrible conspiracy against someone. It is that only. It is very petty, but again, that moment was like
Yeah.
off-putting,
No, but
to say the least.
my sole quibble that way was with Ehrenreich, and a thing that I actually came away admiring about Nolan was that while the main villain of the film is Strauss, a Republican, he is not
Mhm.
letting the Democrats go for what they did to Oppenheimer. Right? So, of the three people in that hearing, the Republican is the one who sided with Oppenheimer,
Oppenheimer.
and the
Yeah,
two Democrats said that he should not get his security clearance.
yeah,
Roger Robb was a Democrat,
yeah.
Gordon Gray was a Democrat. So it's such an interesting thing that how we view politics today is not necessarily how politics has panned out over the years. Like
Mhm.
the Democrats were responsible eventually for, uh, to some degree, it was Eisenhower, of course, who was a Republican, but the Democrats went along with it, right? I mean, the
Mhm.
Mhm.
Democrats are even supporting Strauss, Tim DK's brief cameo. I think he's supposed to be playing a Democrat senator
Mhm.
in uh, the Senate Appointments Committee for Strauss.
Mhm.
And also, I felt that while I liked what they did with Rami Malek, that sudden
Yes.
introduction, no, was a
Yes. Thank
little,
you. Thank you.
Mhm.
That came out of nowhere.
yeah,
Honestly, it should have been a
yeah.
hint
At least
at
give
the
him a
beginning
name
that
from before.
give us something. Give us something. That
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
somebody was exaggerating and saying that was an Abbas Mustan twist. I'm like, no, Abbas
Not an
Mustan
Abbas
never
Mastan
No,
came in.
but
twist.
like no, it's. I think it's a creative liberty taken
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he does not have the ample room to go into how scientists lobbied
Yeah. No,
section
no, no.
the
And
Senate.
David Hill did testify. I'm
I'm
arguing
just
that the placement of David Hill in the
exactly.
narrative does not quite come
Yeah, yeah,
through.
yeah.
Mhm.
Also,
Because
Coming
of
that
how it
way,
is placed, no, the revelation just comes off as loaded in a way,
yeah,
and that just
But
blindsides you.
I was quite I had predicted this wouldn't be in favor of Strauss at all. Like
yeah,
David
yeah.
Hill will testify against him only, no
no, but
matter what
even
he thinks.
Strauss's portrayal as sort of like an antagonist came off as like a twist only, right? What did you guys think about that then?
No, no. I mean, having read the
I
book,
think,
I expected it.
Acha,
I
I
think the
haven't, I
twist.
didn't know anything about it, so.
I think the twist worked for me, but that is solely because of Downey's performance. Because
Yeah, he's very convincing.
until the
Yeah,
twist was happening, he's very convincing as the guy who had supported Oppenheimer for so
Yeah,
long.
yeah, that's what he was an ally
No,
to
but like
yeah,
he,
Oppenheimer.
so
That's what I
in
felt.
the film it is like that, but
Yeah.
it's not so much of a support for Oppenheimer, but more for his reputation because
yeah,
Oppenheimer's reputation preceded him. Na? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mhm.
everybody knew him as the greatest scientific mind of his era.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which is
getting him
also
into
probably not true.
Yeah, the
I mean,
salesman of science. That's what he was, right?
Yeah,
getting him into the position of director of the institute is a big win for
yeah,
Strauss in political circles, you know.
Mm.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
and then he's also getting to know him, so he does not know him
Yeah,
beyond his
from before that.
past,
Yeah,
right? and it's also
Mhm.
petty the way he turns against him. It's very petty. But
Mm.
But
like
I
Amartya,
think so. Sorry, Ashwani. Please continue.
yeah, this
Sorry.
was like I was. This is a callback to what Amartya was asking me, that if it is a merit of Nolan's direction. So there is one thing that I do give to Nolan is that the way in
Mhm.
Downey's monologues, the dialogues have been written. So there
Oh
is
yeah,
one important dialogue in which Downey mentions that I made sure the man is remembered for Trinity, not for
not
Nagasaki
for
and Hiroshima.
Hiroshima or Nagasaki.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
which
that.
is
Mhm.
I
Fantastic
mean,
dialogue.
it's a creative liberty thing. It's not in the book.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
don't think he ever said it. But point is, it's actually true. It rings true because Oppenheimer is not so much remembered as a man responsible for Hiroshima and Nagasaki,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
that's why when it is given to you in terms of the visuals in the film, when you see Truman flinching at Oppenheimer and saying that I was the one who,
Yeah.
you know, I am the one who pushed the button. So
Mm.
people
Correct.
will remember me, and that is exactly what happened. So Hiroshima and Nagasaki are
Are
not
Truman's
about Oppenheimer.
crimes. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not about you. So you don't have to put yourself at the center of the universe every time. So your guilt complex is also a
Is
path to absolve
self-inflated.
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
No.
self-inflated, and you're trying to absolve yourself constantly. So that's where we get to the complexity of Oppenheimer as a
Of
character, and is also inherent narcissism,
Mm.
Yeah,
which
exactly. And
right.
his sort of his ability to like the first interaction he has with Strauss chronologically,
Yeah,
he calls him a lowly shoe salesman.
lowly shoe salesman. Yeah.
It
Mm.
tells you exactly what Oppenheimer was capable of being. He could be an asshole to people for no
Mhm.
good reason,
Mm.
Mhm.
The most
right?
interesting thing you find about his character in the book is that he would be very good and very generous to people who were below him in social order, but he would
Mm.
be assholeish to people who were equals. You know,
Also,
and
I don't know if this is pointed out or if this was in the movie or if I'm remembering it wrong. But every time Oppenheimer, every time the timeline is in color, right? You know that feeling of Oppenheimer being in the how you're stating that his relationship with everybody else is far more cordial, or his assholishness is more calculated to a
Yeah.
certain degree. I, that is
Mhm.
because I think they even said that in interviews, and I think in the movie makes it apparent. The colored version of the timeline is Oppenheimer's point of view of the whole
Self-image.
incident.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
perception. Yeah, 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 the whole.
it's
it's
Mhm.
Oppenheimer's
subjective.
perception.
It's subjective because in the screenplay also it is written in first person.
I.
First
Yeah,
Yeah.
person.
So
yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
the
Mhm.
color
But
thing is entirely subjective.
and the black and white version is the third person view
Third
or what.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and that's why what Oppenheimer could be, the assholeish version of himself, completely
Mhm.
completely foolish towards Strauss and everything else. That's in black and white, because that's like
Mhm.
kind of sort of a true image. And I
No,
mean,
and the self-image thing also comes out right at the end. He agrees to shake Taylor's hand. That's as much a thing of wanting to be gracious
hmm,
as wanting to appear to others as, oh, you know what? I'm a forgiving man.
hmm,
I've
Mhm.
forgiven this betrayal of
hmm,
Edward
Mhm.
Tellers. Whereas his wife is like told Amartya that day, his Kitty's anger with Teller sort of reminds me of my mom. Like my dad might forget somebody who's crossed swords with him at some point in his life, but my
Mhm.
mom won't,
hmm.
and she'll be sort of crystal clear in her responses towards that person. So to me, Kitty was very much, and my mom was sitting right next to me when I was watching the film. So I was like, okay, basically the same person in that sense, minus the alcoholism, of course, fortunately.
I'm glad that Varun brings Kitty's character in the conversation, because I think this is the most important thing that Nolan has done in Oppenheimer film. And the reason is that while reading the book, I could not have a multi-dimensional idea of Catherine, because in all the anecdotes that are mentioned and all the testimonials mentioned about her, it paints a very unidimensional picture of her being her being a problematic person in a lot
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
ways. It does not give you, you can empathize when you think from a very feminist perspective of, having to carry, coming from a traumatic experience and being the wife to this man who was not the perfect man to be with. But then again, you also reading the book, you don't get a great picture of her own personal flaws as a person,
Yeah,
right? And also as a mother, and also as a wife.
Wife,
But
yeah.
and it's not a fault of the authors, because authors have tried to do the best they can with
not just
all
that,
the
like
material they.
uh, uh, small qualification to that, Ashwini, and I'll let you go on.
Yeah, yeah,
Is that when Marty Sherwin started working on the book, everybody from the Oppenheimer family, I think, except everybody, as in, I mean, the parents were both gone.
yeah.
Oppie and Kitty were both dead.
Hmm.
And the children, I don't think, were the most receptive. Ultimately, I think Peter Oppenheimer did end up collaborating with them, with the writers. But Tony, the daughter, she died pretty early into the book's
Yeah.
writing. So the
Hmm.
view we get of Kitty in the book is largely what you know of her through people like Frank Oppenheimer. From relatives, it's Frank Oppenheimer and her son. And then, of course, there's the other people who were at Los Alamos.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
Sorry, Ashwini.
here, yeah, so, I mean, adding on to that, what Nolan has done is that he has first of all presented a very empathetic picture of Kitty Oppenheimer. She
Yeah.
is not just a strong-willed woman, but she is also has a multi-dimensional perspective of what is happening around her. That is one thing. Second thing, she was like the trial scene itself. Sorry, not to call it a
The
trial, but an inquiry or hearing, security hearing scene in which she
Mm-hmm.
testifies. That is very critical. And it's critical because it lands against the passivity of Oppenheimer. Now,
yeah,
this is landing against the flaw of the film. The flaw is Oppenheimer is shown to be passive in the security hearings in his own subjective, you know,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
POV, but his passivity has not been explained. So it is very vulnerable to wrong interpretation, misinterpretation. It can be interpreted as being very guilt ridden. It can be interpreted as conspiring something big, but none of that is true because Oppenheimer was he had sort of lost only. That was like everything turned against him, and he could not cope up with it, and he was destroyed. So in a very essential sense, that those security hearings destroyed the man.
They destroyed,
That
exactly right. What
yeah,
we talked about is
And
narcissism. They
yeah,
destroyed his importance in a larger scheme of things. He was no longer relevant after having been relevant for over a
so long.
decade. He was back to sort of pre-Berkeley days.
And the
Mm-hmm.
climax of that, quote unquote security hearings, quote unquote kangaroo court, the climax of that entire moment, with all the white light,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
emblematic of the blast and
Bomb going
everything,
on. Yeah,
the
yeah.
music completely ratcheting itself up and everything until he just gives up. I think that entire climactic scene kind of shows visually what Ashwini is also saying, right, in the book. That it destroyed him in a way.
yeah.
yeah,
That
and
is
also
panic. That is panic for him.
he was not very comfortable with the hearings. He did not fight them, and it's very
Yeah.
true that Kitty Oppenheimer was very angry at the attorney that Oppenheimer himself, that why are they not fighting them?
Fighting.
Why are they?
Hmm.
And she did, and it's very true that she did, and it's a great scene.
It's a
It's a very
fantastic
interesting.
scene.
Yeah, it's a fantastic scene. But like that passivity is only there because he was panicking, and again the entire so now there are two things which are very open to misinterpretation given the structure of the film of subjective objective black and white color thing. And apart from this passivity, there is another thing which I was saying is open to misinterpretation, and that is the guilt part. Whether Oppenheimer was guilty, was not guilty, or whether he was guilty but in the film they show him to be more guilty than he actually was.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the questions that will definitely arise in any mind who has not read the book.
Hmm.
And ultimately, any film is detached from the source material once it
Source
has been
material.
made. There are two different artworks, you know. So I mean, I'm sort of taking the conversation in that direction now, because
Hmm.
it will be interesting to know what you guys thought about his guilt complex, and what your conclusion is, if there is a conclusion at all.
I thought that was basically the essence of the film. I think that's how he started the film. I mean, that's what I think the origin of for Nolan. to me felt like the origin for the film, and then he made the film
The
according to.
conception of the movie was
Yeah,
basically exploring that question, right? That
yeah.
central
Like
question
after
was
the
Yeah, it
there.
was.
bombing, the last 1 hour is just that. I think that is the film, and then before that is just what he constructed before that. But yeah.
I think we can also dovetail this into the comment around what the entire question of whether his guilt, you know, how much of the bombing should have been shown. That's also a question which is arriving, right? And
Yeah,
I
but
think
then
that was
if it's his
that sequence was
perspective,
perfect.
he never saw the.
exactly, that's what I'm
Right.
getting at. That's what I'm getting at. It's
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
it's like they don't show the bombing because it's his perspective,
Yeah.
right? It's his
No,
perspective, but I think it's also the guilt complex. I think that's why not showing the bombing works in this case,
Hmm.
because I don't know
But it's
even in
also not that he didn't see the
yeah,
committee's report or photographs ever in
he
his
did.
life.
he did it.
He did, but like in the film, he's just turning his eyes away. That is fine. But it's
I
not just the subjective idea. It's also the fact that it's not about Hiroshima. It's about this man right now.
I
You know,
Also,
interpreted
like
this
I
film is
interpreted
not a
yeah,
misery
yeah.
porn.
I
I mean,
no,
that is
like
interpreted
how.
the
I
film's decision.
interpreted it as very different. Yeah. Uh, Sorry, Varun. Just one sentence actually.
Yeah,
That I interpreted it as it's an obsession, right? Because what
Hmm.
Oppenheimer's character has shown, the obsession to understand, like the obsession to understand, the obsession to discover, and the obsession to be greater than most people. I think that is what is driving any character or any human being who is in search for knowledge or answers, right? So creation of the atom bomb, a creation of nuclear fission, and to see nuclear fission as a practicality, that was
Hmm.
what was driving them. Okay, that's a tunnel vision. The fact that
right.
that is the practicality, a practical usage of a theory. That is the tunnel vision. They are looking at atom bomb and detonating of the atom bomb as just a practicality of the theory. Consequences never factored into their mind.
Correct.
Yeah, never. But then that's also the resultant of the whole perspective thing, right? Even his
Yes,
how his political ideologies also like kind of vary throughout the
hmm.
narrative. Then that thing is part of like the whole consequence of his thought processes, right?
I think if we
That's
are
how
going
the
to
horror was also building up, na.
I think if we are going to
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
attribute blame, I think if we are going to attribute blame to Oppenheimer in some regard, I think the blame should be attributed because he was also the chief liaison between the scientists and the government.
And the
So,
government.
Yeah.
so if anyone knew what the consequences could be, if anyone had the emotional bandwidth to understand what the consequences could be, it should be him.
Hmm.
No,
Yeah.
but
And
I think scientists did knew about the consequences. I mean, if mathematics equation says something, then
hmm,
it gives you a pretty much solid answer to this. This will lead to that.
I
Uh,
agree with
but
yeah,
what
but
Ashwini
also
is
there
saying.
yeah, but also there is a thing, right? So if a bomb blasts, okay, would say that the impact of the radiation would cover a radius of this miles. Okay. Now your interpretation of would be that if the radius of it is like that, that means the entire city would be destroyed.
Right.
Understandably, the thing about it is that I don't know whether it ever factored into their mind. I don't know whether it ever factored into their
there
mind
is
that
a
the city would be teeming with
again
people.
the now that I'm listening to my criticism of another thing, there was another point of criticism I had against Oppenheimer, that it does not sort of give importance to two pivotal moments, and one of them was which I'm going to quote right now. And because it does not give attention and focus and ample screen time to that moment, is exactly why somehow you are coming up with this kind of interpretation, and you're not wrong, Amartya.
Hmm.
Because I'll quote. So in when Isidore, Rabi, and Oppenheimer are discussing, essentially Oppenheimer is recruiting Rabi for the program,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
Rabi denies. That is a
Hmm.
pivotal moment because it, there is a very important dialogue in which he says that I don't want 3 centuries of physics to culminate into a weapon of mass destruction. You
Yes.
know, now Nolan's style is something that I do not admire in this moment because he immediately intercuts it to something else.
Yeah, he
It should
doesn't let
have,
it breathe. He doesn't let
yeah,
it breathe.
yeah, it should have given some time and some silence for this dialogue to get registered at something that is
Hmm.
that is exactly what happened. It's very it's prophetic, and
Hmm.
it's also it is the moral fiber of the entire question of whether you should drop a bomb
Hmm.
or
But
whether you should
Ashwini,
make it or not.
I'd argue that given that part of the film is happening from Oppenheimer's perspective, I'd say the cut is perfectly logical, or for not letting it breathe is perfectly logical, because Oppenheimer purely wasn't interested in the consequences.
Agree.
He didn't care that the idea of physics 3 centuries down would essentially be one big bomb,
Yeah.
right? His
Hmm.
entire thing was, this is the task and we're going to do it. Again,
Tunnel
you could be
vision.
right, I could be wrong,
No, but
but
like, I mean, no, no, no. It's not whether you are right and I'm
no, no,
wrong,
no.
because we
I'm
both
looking
are
It's
at it
right
as an
in
interpretation.
some
interpretation.
ways.
Yeah.
It's
Your
interpretation.
your your interpretation is actually like this counter is perfectly there. It's a truth. I'm not denying that, but I'm just saying ki, so again, now this is suffering from subjectivity, like you said.
Yeah.
It's suffering from
Hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
subjectivity of Oppenheimer, and I'm not denying that there was a way in which bomb was could not have been developed. Bomb was supposed to be developed
Hmm.
because fission was discovered. Scheme of things, everything is falling into place, and there was no way out. It was inevitable. The
Hmm.
only thing evitable was whether to use it or not.
Use it or not. And
Right?
I think, there's this terrible Canadian telefilm called Nuremberg. I've
Mm-hmm.
forgotten who the director was, but Alec Baldwin played Robert Jackson, and uh, Brian Cox played Herman Goering in that.
Hmm.
So it's an absolutely terrible production. I would not wish it upon anyone to watch it unless you're a Brian Cox fan. And in that, Brian Cox asks this guy who's playing the American psychologist at Nuremberg prison, Captain Gustav Gilbert, would the Americans have dropped the bomb as easily on the Germans? And
I
I
think
think,
Taylor also kind of tweaks this dialogue. Na? How what do you think if the Japanese would have surrendered if they dropped the bomb or something like that? He said this dialogue.
demonstration.
Yeah,
I think that, but here the thing is
yeah.
about the politics of it, about the racial situation, right?
Yeah.
Would you have dropped it
Yes.
on people who are racially similar to you as easily as you dropped it on a bunch of people who you, as a nation, consider racially inferior? Because again, American politics at the time was, they didn't lock up all Americans of German or Italian descent, but they did proceed to lock up most Americans of Japanese descent.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
think that would have been. It's not supposed to be something the film caters to, but
That would have been
it,
an
it does
interesting
raise an
angle.
interesting question,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Whether, because the Germans were, of course, developing their own bomb, but by then the British bomber raids had been successful. The
Yeah.
heavy water plants had been destroyed at in Norway, so they would never have gotten the bomb.
Hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah, I think the conundrum is the fact that we're talking about it so much
I
feeds the
think the
film
movie
itself.
succeeds. I think the movie succeeds because we are
Yeah,
talking about it.
Succeeds,
Yeah.
but
exactly.
Yeah.
only half-heartedly in this regard. Actually, when it comes
Hmm.
to the use of the bomb, now when it comes to that question, it does not succeed fully. I would
Hmm.
say, because there is another very crucial scene which is suffering again from the subjectivity of Oppenheimer, and this is the second pivotal scene I was mentioning, and it is the discussion that happens when they are sort of deciding where to drop the bomb with
The speech, right?
Oppenheimer.
After dropping
No,
the
no,
bomb.
no. In the room,
In the room, yeah, with
Oppenheimer and the
Stimson and
politicians.
Jane
Yeah,
Marshall and everyone. Yeah,
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. In
Kyoto.
that, yeah, Kyoto thing. That discussion should have, in a very from an outsider's POV. I think that needs a lot of very 12 Angry Men sort of treatment, in which the
Mm-hmm.
fallacy and foolishness and the of all these men should come out in the open.
Right.
And it does not. It does not exactly. Because again, a film is very limited by. I mean, a book is very expensive. Film is limited by screen time. Film is again then
Mm-hmm.
limited by the perspective that Nolan is using.
And the
One is
choices
the
Nolan makes, and the choices
yeah,
Nolan makes.
Exactly. So when he's using Oppenheimer's perspective, obviously the entire Silat's petition is going to, get sidelined. But it was a very important thing that was happening, and this answers the question whether scientists knew about the consequences and what they thought about it. 148 out of 150 scientists signed the petition to
Hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
drop the bomb without a warning, without demonstration. I mean, they recommended what can be done, you know. And
Hmm.
the more you read up, the more you realize it was only a
It was
very
stated even
strategic
in the
choice.
document. It was stated even in the documentary as well. The day after Trinity, that they were
Mm-hmm.
they did not want to drop the bomb. They wanted a one. They wanted to at least give a warning. They wanted to at least evacuate, or even that they wanted a demonstration or whatever it is. I think it was even mentioned in the document.
Demonstration should have been the easiest thing. Like you bring a
Yes.
delegation, bomb fails, you kill those men. I think this was suggested by Rabi only in a very
Hmm.
uncharacteristic way because I don't remember who suggested this to Oppenheimer. But people were lobbying. Imagine this: people were lobbying Oppenheimer to convince the government to not drop the bomb,
Hmm.
and he did not
Mm-hmm.
do a good job at this at
Hmm.
it.
But I think that's the central thing, right?
It is a
Oppenheimer
center, yeah, definitely.
needed the atomic bomb to be a success for the work at Los Alamos to have meaning in his life, and for
Yeah.
his life to have meaning in a because even after he was stripped of his security clearance, the real Oppenheimer never went on the record to say I regret the
Yeah, yeah.
atomic bomb. He
Hmm.
wanted the atom bomb to exist because it also gave his life meaning. Look at it. No Nobel Prize in an era where pretty much all his peers had one.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That said a lot about his acceptance by his peers as well. The
Hmm.
bomb essentially meant he didn't need a Nobel Prize. He didn't need any greater recognition of his work. He,
Mm-hmm.
whatever his I also believe that having read the book and subsequently watched the film, I am of the opinion that some of his opposition to the hydrogen bomb was that it was Ulam and Teller who would get the glory for it. That it was not
Okay.
really his baby, which the atomic bomb was. Even if he didn't design it or he wasn't like
I think
supremely
that was
involved in
I
the
think that
scientific
also
part.
I think that also came out in the movie as well, especially in the
Yeah,
discussion with Strauss and him when Strauss was
yeah.
asking about the hydrogen bomb and everything. He's trying to answer that there was a hesitation also, right? He can't exactly formulate correct answers on what to say.
Yeah,
That
Mm-hmm.
is
it would be
also
a bit.
because that is also because he does not want an out from the Washington. Like wants to. He is a very complex person, but also very simple conformist. Like he
Yeah.
Yeah.
conforms. He
Hmm.
wants to be in the
Diplomacy to
good
tha. Yeah.
books. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
also very juvenile sort of diplomacy. Like he was a good person, and he was good to talk to, and that's why he kept on winning admiration of people, and he became an insider in a lot of things. But
Hmm.
he, in very crucial things that he advocated for later in his life, he could not get those things done.
Yeah.
Hmm.
He could not stop the super bomb program, or he could not lead to disarmament, or even an international cooperation on this thing, arms race. So he could not do those things. And for
Hmm.
the guilty part, we come back to this, and now that Varun mentioned, it's very interesting because later in his life, not that he didn't uh, regret making the bomb, or even apologizing, or let's say just saying that I am
Mm-hmm.
feeling bad about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, even though he did somewhere mention that he did not understand why Nagasaki was important. But then again, he categorically denied being guilty at a very later stage in life when I guess a German play was made on his life,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he watched it, and he was only bitter about the fact that in the German play, the protagonist in the end gives a speech sort of thing, which implies that he's guilty.
and
So
also that the hearings were a tragedy, which is something he kept telling himself they were not. He kept insisting that they were a farce, whereas
yeah,
they had very real implications on his mental and physical health, which he and subsequently his family have continued to deny. Even
Hmm.
his grandchildren today say that we believe it's a farce, we don't believe it's a tragedy. Whereas undoubtedly the smoking and then the stress obviously would have accelerated
Hmm.
Oppenheimer's own
Mm-hmm.
sort of meeting with his maker.
what all of it means is that this movie overall and Nolan's decision to frame this movie throughout as a subjective viewpoint of Oppenheimer himself.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a double-edged sword in a way. It's always risky.
Yeah. 100%.
It's always risky. You are always at the risk of showing yourself as sympathetic to the guy's plight, or just following. You are never going to have. There is always a risk of people saying that, oh, you are showing him to be a sympathetic person, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're showing him to be completely wrong, you know so it is a double-edged sword in a way. And honestly, I don't know if everybody agrees with me about this. I think the success of a movie like Oppenheimer, for me at least, even putting my frame of mind to questioning about Oppenheimer, or even letting me ask these questions, or even letting me think about this in a larger context. I think if a movie can succeed in doing that for me,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
I think it did its job in a way. Uh,
It
it
does. It does. I
Yeah,
mean, I think adding on to that, the biggest success for the film, we all cannot actually draw any kind of conclusive statement about
yes, yes,
Oppenheimer, by the way, because
yeah,
Oppenheimer, at the end of the day, remains a very complex person.
yes,
So if I mean, one part can say that okay, he opposed the super bomb because it was not his baby, but there is also a huge amount of reason is that super bomb was actually genocide. So
yeah.
we cannot say
Mm-hmm.
it was one thing or the other. It's always a mix, right?
It is. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
no.
It's
there
a
is no
genocide.
denying in that.
Yeah, yeah. It could have led to genocide. The fact that it's not his baby is also an added bonus, because he had an added advantage of being doubly against that entire thing.
No, but
Yeah.
also he by that time he had also realized that Americans, his own country, is very aggressive
Is
Yeah,
in
aggressive. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
is an aggressor essentially. He had realized that. So
Yeah.
the
Because Korea
existence
and
of
all
a
was about to sort of
Oh, yeah. The Korean
blow
War.
up, right? Yeah.
Korean
the
I'm
War, yeah.
sorry,
existence of a
police
bomb
action.
would make the world unsafe,
Yeah,
and he
And
thought that
he also refused to aid other countries in securing atomic bombs in
yeah.
their own, like notably India, right? He received an invitation to come and help develop our atomic bomb.
Hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
is said to have refused that invitation. We got
but
their
like
invitation.
again that is very politically it's very impossible thing to do. India
Yeah,
was a Soviet ally. He cannot
correct.
come and confirm that he is actually a Soviet spy.
So,
Yeah,
so it's
If
fine.
Mm-hmm.
Which would have done it? Yeah.
yeah, it would have been killed his entire image in America,
Yeah,
and that
just
would
the
have been
fact that he met with Nehru
Nehru.
enough would have destroyed his credibility as a politically sort of loyal citizen,
hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That
which he
but
wasn't. Politically, he didn't conform to the American way of thinking.
Yeah.
But
Right.
beyond that, any what other criticisms do you think you would put on the film in general?
I don't know if it is criticism or something. I will say that Oppenheimer reinvigorated the biopic genre in a way,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
because
That's not a criticism.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I can't call it as a criticism
Mm-hmm.
because it's like if I'm going to always predict what the biopic is supposed to be, like hagiographical and all
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
While there's a sense of familiarity to that, I would also appreciate change. And
Yeah.
doing a biopic like this, because this is kind of sort of a biopic, and giving it so much
Mm-hmm.
narrative tension, however
Mm,
you do it,
and
multiple
spectacle.
timelines,
Mm-hmm.
however you do it, you are giving it
Mm-hmm.
a narrative tension, and that is extremely different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if
I
we look
think
at.
making a biopic is all about the character only, but sometimes when you consider biopic in a general convention, it becomes more about the subplots, the history around the person.
Hmm,
But Oppenheimer is more like it is the character analysis. All the
Mm-hmm.
things are happening surrounding that guy only, and it's the consequences of his moralities
hmm,
that is being portrayed through all the horror. So
Mm-hmm.
particularly that scene where he gives the speech
Yeah.
after the explosion,
hmm,
the entire when he starts to realize through the cheering and shouting that he
Mm-hmm.
actually starts to realize that he has made a mistake. And
Mm.
see, all this thing you guys have been talking about, that he never knew. That is the horror Nolan tried to portray. That we
Yeah.
know what is going to happen, but
Yeah.
this guy doesn't know, and they're still going, like, what do you call it? They're going to the tip of the iceberg.
It's fascinating that the hoorah, the cheer, that
Yeah,
we won and everything. That's
yeah,
It's
the
about the
horror, right?
whole craziness of it. They were
yeah,
just
Yeah.
on another level of high about all of
Yeah.
exactly.
this,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
which was
And
scary again.
And the entire thing is about a loss. The
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
entire thing, what they were thinking of as a victory, turned out to be a huge loss. It was building up to, the entire movie built up to a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that the most famous line, the most uh, spoke the dialogue which has been mostly spoke of, now I have become dead, the destroyer of worlds. It it
For a lot
works
of reasons.
for a lot of reasons. It works for a
Okay.
lot of reasons. Like when he first says that line while reading the Bhagavad Gita during that infamous sex scene.
For a
How
lot
It
was
of
it?
it
reasons.
How much did they cut? Did they zoom in on the
it was
Yeah,
scene?
they
no, it
zoomed
was a
in.
black
zoom in.
bar. It was a black
No,
bar.
no,
No,
no.
no,
That
Black
wasn't.
Bar is later.
Black bar is later. Black bar is later. This one the zoom. This one they zoomed in. You can
And what about
understand
the
that they
No,
scene
zoomed
no,
in
there
the?
was black bar in the scene as well. So first, the very first shot that comes in
Uh-huh.
when they were having sex. So it was like a black bar, and Killian
Uh-huh.
Murphy was on this side,
in. Oh yeah, yeah,
and it
yeah. The
was,
Uh-huh.
door. Yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
yeah, the door
Mhm.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That
I thought
wasn't
it
the
was a
door.
door. I
That
thought
wasn't
it
the
was a
door.
door. It wasn't a door.
Yeah, that was a black
It
bar.
wasn't a door. It was a
What
black
about
bar.
the scene where he's in that
Courtroom, na?
inquiry thing,
Courtroom.
and
It was a black bar. It was a black
okay,
bar. They
okay.
were saying,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so yeah, I mean, in a way, he was destroying Gene Tetlock's life.
Mm-hmm.
That line, I think that line played a metaphor in Gene Tetlock's life and his life and his vision creating an atomic bomb. Because he tried to, like, after meeting with Gene Tatlock, he became a communist. So his beliefs and everything regarding FBI and all the political
that's also a
interferences that
bit of an
happened.
overreach. He was never really a communist.
No, but
He was
that's
a
the thing, right?
left-leaning guy, right?
That's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
they're
That's the
implying
thing.
Yeah,
at, right? That's
No,
his
he
paranoia too, right?
yeah,
he was a convenient leftist of the highest order,
The convenience is always convenience. It's like all
pretty
I'm
much.
doing is learning knowledge and
Yeah,
Yeah.
utilizing the knowledge to my own convenience. That's all it is. He's
he
Theoretical
never
was.
knowledge.
he's never committing to any of
He's
the
not
any of it.
committed to it.
Mm.
Yes, he's not. Yeah, like he's not committed to his marriage also, right? At one point,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's he can't, apart from the bomb and from physics, he's just not sort of wedded fiercely to the other things that you would expect to be constant in his life.
Yeah.
But like Amartya pointed out, I think when I got out of the screening, I texted these. I said I said this distinctly. I think this may revive a genre. I think the pitfall is that everybody could go to this trick now and be like, let me try making it this way. But the great thing is the novelty will die quicker than any other thing.
What is
But
You
the
that's
new
can't.
with
trick?
every other
The
trend, right?
non-linearity. You're talking
Huh?
about
But
the
like
No,
I
non-linearity.
no,
think
all of it. Because
All of it.
when Hollywood copies, they copy like they will take
That's every
form,
studio.
structure,
That's
everything.
every
That's
Yeah.
every
yeah.
industry actually. Yeah,
That's every
the
industry.
trend thing will happen, but it's okay.
But
I feel
I
it's part
think
of the whole process.
I think if you get a couple of good films out of it about interesting people, like because people suddenly went, oh, JFK reference at the end means JFK biopic, and then
But they've already made one.
No, no,
nobody's
we don't
interested
want
in
a
a
JFK
JFK
biopic.
biopic,
Thank you, please.
and
I
Oliver
like
Please,
think
Stone
please
I
end.
already
think
made one. No?
I think what Varun is saying now. So usme I think there is one thing which is very dangerous as a trajectory as far as I can imagine is that this film, in my opinion, a great film, and yet it suffers from subjectivity.
Yes,
So it is a very challenging thing to do. Nolan
yes.
has some sort of way maneuvered through the challenge, but
He's
he's
manipulating
not.
you. It's that way. I think it's
Yeah,
it's it's not subject suffering from subjectivity. I feel it's part of the whole process, right?
He's
If you
using
talk,
it,
subjectivity as a method of immersion. That's what he's
huh?
doing. He's
Yeah,
putting
yeah,
you
yeah,
in.
yeah,
He's
no,
yeah.
but
putting you in.
like I said, I mean, because films become limited by the screen time. Now, so even if you have a
Yeah.
subjective POV in Nolan's film, at least you have this black and white entire sort of sequence within the screenplay that gives you a third party perspective.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
sort of balances things out, and without, and yet without, uh, uh, without changing for the 2 or 3 sequences which I said that I felt were important.
Mhm.
But then again, this is a problem of interpretation at the end of the day, because when I read a book, I might find some things as more important as than others. But when Nolan must have read the book, he might have found some other
Yeah.
sequences to be more important. That is a problem with
That is a
subjectivity.
choice.
And we
That is a
can,
choice, right? You choose
yeah, and
what is
then
more
it becomes
interesting
a,
to you and the film
exactly.
at the end. Yeah.
It's also essentially a partial adaptation because all the
But
Strauss scenes are not in the book.
Hmm.
but
None
then
of it
you
is.
also have to look at it in this way. He's kind of making movies in this era where there is the whole point of making anything at this point is how many of eyeballs can you grab,
Can you
right?
grab?
Exactly.
And
So he's
conformism
trying to,
is the deal of the day, right?
So
so we
he
can't
has
run
done a
away from
great
it,
job.
right?
It's not discrediting Nolan. My idea is that
Hmm.
if this is abused uh, you
Yeah.
know as a
If the
screenplay device,
consequences.
But yeah.
then it can become a justification for hagiographies. You know,
Of course,
Exactly.
of course.
if you apply the subjective POV in hagiographic narratives, you
Mm.
have your justification inbuilt into the screenplay.
Yeah.
But a lot
You
of
know,
people have already done that. It's not nothing new. Like,
It doesn't need perspective. Hagiography will always be in service of the
huh,
protagonist.
exactly
will
my point.
will be,
And it's been happening
it
for
will be,
ages now,
but
right?
you can obviously criticize it. What I'm saying is that if the film carries their own justification of the criticism that you're going to put forth,
Ah.
that is a dangerous idea
Even
to
if
me.
the movie,
You're
even
talking
if
about
the
Sanju.
movie is, yes, that's what I was going to say.
And so
Never really expected that.
I'll just name drop a very interesting film that comes to my mind when we are talking in these terms, and that is The Wind Rises.
Hmm.
Hayao
Uh,
Miyazaki.
Miyazaki's Wind Rises. The important thing about that film is that it's very similar in terms of things, because in that film also an engineer is chasing dreams, what he essentially calls cursed dreams, because what his dreams are manifest into instruments that get weaponized by the political leaders, and then act as, essentially weapons.
Hmm.
They are fighter planes. But in that film, Miyazaki is recognizing the conflict like this, but at the end of the day, it remains about the person and his life through the uh, through the Second World War, essentially,
Hmm.
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So, and I mean, it's a very swift balance that you have to maintain. Nolan has done it in his own way. I'm not saying he has
Hmm.
not done it, but in the hands of a lesser filmmaker, it will be terrible.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But that's the thing, right? A filmmaker can copy everything else from Oppenheimer. They'll not, just doing that is not enough for them to imbibe Nolan's skill,
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
right? And
sure.
the ones who are going to copy, they don't have skill anyway,
Hmm.
right?
I
So
mean,
it doesn't amount to much ultimately, even if they copy it tomorrow.
I think that is a great
Blanket
point
statement
to
डाल के full वरुण ने full
that is where we should stop at this point because I feel we've I'm beyond exhausted. But yeah, any other closing thoughts about the film that you guys thought? Anything
No,
else?
I'm just thinking about what he's going to do next.
Yeah,
That's all I'm thinking about.
Maybe
I
you should
don't.
do
I don't.
some romantic drama.
Comedy, dude. He does
He's
good.
he's anyway on David Lean trajectory, right? Making
I
anything
think
in his
Yes.
Yeah.
Now he
spectacles.
will.
So he's
Oh
probably
God,
gonna
please
do
don't. Oh God,
his
please
Doctor
don't make the
Zhivago is
Doctor
coming very
Jivago.
soon.
Please don't. Please don't. God no. Please don't.
No,
I think he should do
I'll
a
be
horror
smitten
film.
if Nolan does a brief encounter. I'll be
Ah.
smitten.
Hmm. Possibly, yeah.
I want Nolan to make something on the
I want him
grounds
to
of
do musical. Musical would be funny.
He
musical would be
he,
just
he needs
the
subjects
entire
that
theater
have to
would
be
be
self
shaking.
serious. He cannot do
The entire
something.
theater would be shaking in musical.
Yeah, he
It'll
needs
be
to be very
gong
self
gong
serious
gong
with whatever
gong.
he does. Simple. He cannot
That's true.
make something he doesn't believe in properly. And I think he believes in something which, at least to him, is serious in quote unquote serious. So
I think I know.
yeah.
I know that we are talking so much about this movie, and I think that is enough of a credit. But I think it needs to be restated again. This is Nolan's best written work. It
Yeah.
feels like after Tenet, he took a writing class and he took a reading
Arey.
class. He remembered how to write exposition and everything because the
Ah,
writing is leaps and
Also,
bounds.
the best
He
ensemble
went to
between.
Javed Sab and learned how to write dialogue.
Yes.
Like also the
okay.
best ensemble, I feel like it has a great acting showcase. I mean, here and there, it's not like he acting is flawed in his films, but
No, no,
this
it's not
one,
flawless, but it's
but
leaps and bounds
No, but
ahead.
in many places, I think actors outshone the characters themselves. I felt. I mean, not
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in
yeah.
yeah.
personas, but as characters themselves. I feel.
Mhm.
But yeah,
I mean,
on that.
it is very tricky to do that because a lot of scenes are actually in montage sequences.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is the end statement. And thank you. This is the end of the episode. And I know it's a very jarring end because that's how I felt about the editing. But yeah, I think this is the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening. You can follow all of these guys. The profiles will be in the description. Please follow us. You can follow us on Queen's Red Film Podcast. You can follow all of these guys on their respective socials on Letterboxd and Instagram. And Prithvish has one last statement. What?
No, I just wanted to ask you which Nolan film had such jarring conclusion.
I don't know.
Dare we say it?
Do
I
we
think
have
that's
to say?
this episode's gonna end like I don't know at some point.
It's time for a
Uh,
new protagonist.
Welcome to the afterlife.
To do what I do, I need some idea of the threat we face.
As I understand it, we're trying to prevent World War III.
Nuclear holocaust.
No. Something worse.
All I have for you is a word. Tenet. It'll open the right doors, some of the wrong ones too.
You have to start looking at the world in a new way.
Don't try to understand it. Feel it.